Welcome to the Book Binge. I'm your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and today is part 2 of catching up on some Stephen Graham Jones reviews that I needed to catch up on. Beyond that, I don't really have any preamble. A couple weeks ago, I covered Night of the Mannequins. In a couple weeks, I'll be covering Flush Boy. Today, it's Mapping the Interior. Let's just begin, like I normally do with my reviews, with the good of the novella, and, well, this will be a quick review, let's say. The good of Mapping the Interior is basically that this novella starts off actually incredibly good. I would say the first 15 to 20 pages of the book are just incredible because of the way that Jones handles the thematic ideas of grief and loss from a kid's perspective, and exploring the way that the denial of loss might manifest in someone younger is absolutely brilliant. So the opening of the story is incredible in that way. Like I said, the depiction of a kid coping with a version of loss, with grief, by kind of imagining a lost loved one was such a real thing to experience in the story that it felt like it was actually happening. Super evocative moment, super evocative scene. Really enjoyable sequence. The first 15-20 pages, like I said, of this thing are absolutely incredible, and frankly alone kind of made this thing worth reading for me, even though I didn't love much of the rest of it, and we will get into that. But overall, I would say the best part of Mapping the Interior is that the conceptual and thematic underbelly of everything is excellent. If you connect with the template of the book, you'll remember it forever. In fact, I will probably remember this book forever just because of those first 15 pages. So if that's something you're interested in experiencing, I highly recommend you at least read the first fifth. But with that being said, I was disappointed in the rest of Mapping the Interior. So let's talk about the bad of this book. Let's just say that I found the story rather convoluted and confusing as a general rule. I found it very difficult to follow. So it's not necessarily that everything's like a fever dream, but it kind of has some of that going on in there. There's a lot of material that's I'm not entirely sure I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I don't know how to, reconcile with that. And that happens a lot in this story. When it wasn't convoluted or confusing, I just wasn't really a fan of what it was doing. So the story itself is pretty underwhelming beyond the introduction of the book that I loved so much. Everything after the first quarter of it is just not very consistent with what it seems to be setting up, and kind of goes weird directions, the way that Stephen Graham Jones tends to do weird things with a story that I don't think needed to do weird things or go weird directions. The first portion of it was really powerful, and I think he insisted too much on taking that directions that just didn't fully make sense with the brilliance that he had crafted before that, and that unfortunately just kind of ruined the entire novella for me. As a result of, the shift in direction and all of this kind of stuff as well, Mapping the Interior just wasn't really my thing. As for the ugly, let's put it this way. The back of the book is truly awful in the case of Mapping the Interior. So let's go ahead and read you what this is supposedly about. Walking through his own house at night, a 15-year-old thinks he sees a person in full Blackfeet regalia step through a doorway. Instead of the people who could be there, his mother or his brother, the figure reminds him of his long-gone father, who died mysteriously before his family left the reservation. When he follows it, he discovers his house is bigger and deeper than he knew. This concept is very weird. This back of the book is not good, actually. So it gets the main character's age completely wrong. I don't believe the character is ever 15 years old in the story. He might be, actually, but I felt like the age was not that. When I finished reading this book, because I read it in one day, I was like, the back of that book is not accurate at all. I don't remember him being 15, and maybe that's me just being incredibly stupid, but I don't remember the character being the age that the back of the book supposedly says he's supposed to be. And what it's supposedly about there at the end, when he follows it, he discovers his house is bigger and deeper than he know. This isn't anything explored until basically the very end of the book. So the expectations that this thing set for me are very, very inaccurate to what I ended up getting to some degree. Like, there's obviously the hint at kind of what I explained about in terms of the loss of grief. You know, you could maybe parse out that that's one of the things that the book experiments with, that the novella explores based off of that description. But like basically everything that I expected this to be, it ultimately didn't end up being. I went into this book, this novella, this story, thinking that this would either be like my favorite of the Stephen Graham Jones books I'd read, or that it would very much not be my favorite. And it turned out being the latter of those things. And it wasn't just me that thought this, it was a couple of my friends as well that kind of discussing things with me. We kind of thought that this would be like, this is probably going to be one that you really connect with. This is probably going to be one that I love. And I did not love it. I loved those first 15 to 20 pages, but that was right about it. Obviously, I didn't like this thing as a whole. And what I did like was the start of it, not what the concept even says that it's really about. You know, it basically what the back of the book gives you is the sequence that I really love about the book, is that early moment. And I think that early moment is very special in the book, but as far as the rest of it, just doesn't really work for me. So for recommending Mapping the Interior, you know, it's hard to say whether I recommend this or not. Obviously, my criticisms and everything make it sound like I definitely don't recommend this, but the first fifth of the novella is just so good and also so short that, like, I think I do recommend at least trying Mapping the Interior because of how good the beginning is, because of how good the first 20-25% of it is. But I also would have absolutely no hard feelings at all if you don't care to bother with the story because of, you know, the criticisms that I outlined. Because in all, Mapping the Interior is simply just fine. It's not terrible. It's not offensively bad. But like, it was really disappointing, and I was pretty upset by what it ended up doing, given how much I loved the way that it started, and just going downhill completely for the rest of the book afterwards. It was, like I said, very disappointing, and I wasn't very happy about that. Admittedly, however, I think I would enjoy Mapping the Interior at least a little bit more on a reread, because now I kind of know the general direction that it takes, what it is actually doing, as opposed to what I was expecting it to do, and as opposed to the first 15-20 pages where it kind of, you know, shifts gear a little bit. But I just don't really care to spend a day rereading this book, you know, like that would be my entire reading for a day to actually get through it, and I don't think I really care to spend that time doing so, just so that I can could enjoy this a little bit more, you know. One of those really weird kind of gray sticky areas that I don't really like. In a way, I suppose, like that aspect alone, the fact that I'm not willing to spend like one singular reading day rereading a novella, that's kind of damning, you know. It's definitely good indication of how I feel about the entire story. There's incredible early portions, but petering execution on the remainder of it makes it like impossible to actively recommend. Like I said, I think if you're interested, you should give it a try, because the first portion of it is so good, but the rest of it is not that great. Yeah, there you go. That is my pretty rough review of Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. In a couple of weeks, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, will be my Flush Boy review. I'm going to be recording that here very shortly, and then I'll be done wrapping up Spoopy Season 2023 and catching up on basically all of the book reviews that I need to catch up on at this point. So, you know, that'll be pretty awesome. Thank you for watching this video if you did. I hope you're excited for the next few reviews as we kind of wrap up this little transitory period of just a million reviews and not much else going on because of a busy work schedule and probably chaos in my personal life and all of that whatnot. God knows I'm certainly looking forward to the next few reviews though, so, you know, I hope you enjoy them. With that being said, I have been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.